her council office, and future plans. So I'm going to pass it over to the speaker of the morning, Councilmember Kshama Sawant, to kick us off. Please give her a round of applause and welcome.
Thank you for being here. This is now the 10th year that I've had the honor to serve as an elected representative of Seattle's working people. Workers in Seattle, through getting organized alongside my Socialist City Council office and my organization, Socialist Alternative, have won historic victories. We won the $15 an hour minimum wage, the Amazon tax, and landmark renters' rights. These victories have set a powerful example that has had national and even international impact. We've had to overcome the combined might of big business, the corporate media, and the political establishment in our 4 election victories and in every struggle. Each time, working people refused to back down, and again, we have prevailed. This is the most important lesson from our example of socialist politics in Seattle, that when workers and young people get organized and fight, we can win. That no meaningful progressive change can be won under capitalism without the vicious opposition of the rich and their political servants. And that instead of backing down, we need to build the unity of working class people and fight back fiercely and proudly. A rapacious and parasitic capitalist class has amassed untold fortunes off the labor of billions of workers, but their system is in deep crisis and cannot sustain itself. Meanwhile, it eviscerates ordinary people's living standards with historic levels of inflation, and over 800 million go to bed hungry each night. The right wing is on the attack against abortion rights and LGBTQ+ people. The future of human civilization rests on a knife's edge with the existential threat of climate catastrophe. Working and young people cannot afford status quo corporate politics. At my inauguration in 2014, I said, "Let me make one thing absolutely clear. There will be no backroom deals with corporations or their political servants. There will be no rotten sellout of the people I represent." Our Socialist Council office has held true to that. It is extremely regrettable that exceedingly few other elected officials in this country can say the same. Since I was elected in 2013, more than 200 self-identified Democratic Socialist candidates have been elected nationally, but unfortunately, with rare exceptions, the overwhelming majority of them have abandoned their campaign promises and failed to stand up to the political establishment. Just last month, we saw the historic and shameful betrayal of railroad workers by members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, including the chair of the caucus, Pramila Jayapal, and the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist Squad members like AOC. The breaking of the railroad workers' strike by the progressives in Congress does not just hurt railroad workers, it is a betrayal of the entire working class. Such sellouts have even more sinister consequences. It gives an opening to the right wing, as we saw with 5 Republican senators disingenuously voting against the strike-breaking bill to pretend to be on the side of railroad workers. These Republicans, who in reality nakedly serve the interests of the wealthy, are being allowed to pose as the party of the worker. How is this possible? Only because the Democratic Party is moving further and further right in their loyal support of the corporate elite. It is deeply unfortunate that it was the right-wing Freedom Caucus who demonstrated how to use leverage to force establishment concessions rather than the Squad. With the continued failure of any real leadership on the left, the House speakership fight revealed just how quickly and dangerously the right-wing current can fill the void. It is a frightening flashback to how Trump won his election in the first place. Working people and the left cannot stand by and wait on so-called progressive elected officials. We cannot put our faith in the AOCs or the Pramila Jayapals, even though I understand there were many who had high expectations for them. AOC recently claimed that she could not fight against democratic leaders on behalf of workers because it would cause, quote unquote, relational harm with those party leaders. Well, what about the vast and very real harm taking place in the absence of such a fight for our needs? The organization that should be holding AOC and the squad accountable, the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA, appears to be unwilling to do so. It gives me no pleasure to say this because I am currently a member of DSA, but the DSA leadership has, for the most part, provided cover for the misleadership of the squad. There is a vacuum of real left leadership locally and nationally. We need a new party of the working class, one that holds elected officials accountable, that bases itself on social movements, that organizes alongside workers on the streets and in workplaces. Elections are not the only, much less the primary path to political change because the political system is rotten from top to bottom under capitalism. Now, as the global crisis worsens, the rot spreads deeper and deeper, and the threat of further corruption by the far right hangs over us all. In India, the country I was born in, the far right is in power and rapidly consolidating it. In the US, the midterms were but a temporary reprieve until we get organized, unless we get organized. Capitalism needs to be overthrown. We need a socialist world, and that is only possible by mobilizing many millions of working people around genuine socialist ideas and fighting relentlessly for our interests as a class. But the task of rebuilding the class struggle in America will go nowhere if young people and the rank and file of the labor movement are not clear about the role of the Democratic Party and the need for a new party that serves us, not the rich. Working people need to recognize that we have to fight independently of the two big business parties and of the leaders who make excuses for them. Last year saw hundreds of thousands of workers fighting to unionize their workplaces or going on strike to win a good contract, whether at Amazon or at Starbucks or at the University of California. We saw the historic victory of Amazon workers at JFK 8 in New York by the newly formed Amazon Labor Union. The year before, we saw Striketober, which included historic battles like the John Deere strike, and here in Seattle, the strike of the Pacific Northwest carpenters. And it was less than 3 years ago that the biggest street protest movement in United States history took place, the Black Lives Matter struggle in the wake of George Floyd's murder by police. Working people want to fight back, but we need to get better organized. We need a nationwide movement, an independent rank and file campaign organizing in workplaces and on the streets. It should be progressive labor unions using their resources to launch such a movement as unions have done in the UK with the Enough is Enough campaign. But that has not happened. Unfortunately, much of the union leadership in this country is closely tied to the Democratic establishment, afraid to call out the Democrats, afraid to run independent candidates, afraid to build strong strike actions based on bold demands, afraid to rock the boat. That is why, alongside Socialist Alternative and others, I am announcing the launch of such a national movement, Workers Strike Back, instead of myself running for re-election again in Seattle's District 3. We have no illusion that a mass movement can be built overnight, but we urgently need to get started. Working people have set a powerful example in this city. It is time to build on that nationally to widen and strengthen the class struggle. You can see our website at workersstrikeback.org. There are volunteers here today handing out flyers. Workers Strike Back will be launched in early March in cities around the country, from Seattle to New York to Chicago to Minneapolis to Oakland to Houston and beyond. Here in Seattle, we will be holding a launch rally on March 4th at 12 noon at Kane Hall at the University of Washington. The main demands of Workers' Strike Back are: workers need a real raise, good union jobs for all, fighting racism, sexism, and all oppression, quality affordable housing and free health care for all, no more sellouts. We need a new party. You can read our full program on our website, and everyone who agrees should sign the petition and share it widely. Alongside Workers' Strike Back, we will be launching a video broadcast to bring socialist politics and strategy to working people nationally and internationally. This video broadcast, which I will help host, will be called On Strike, and it will begin airing this summer. More and more, media calling itself independent and left has looked the other way or actively provided cover to politicians as they betray working people. This comes at a real price because it creates confusion and demoralization, effectively betraying working people a second time. One final thing. While I'm sure the corporate establishment in Seattle will be very happy with the news that I am not running again, they should not rush to mix their martinis just yet, because we are not done here. My council office will continue fighting relentlessly for working people right up until the final days of my term. We will be bringing rent control for a vote, and alongside our new organization, Workers' Strike Back, we will be building our movement for renters and workers' rights. And when this term is over, we will continue to be disturbers of the political peace in Seattle as well as nationally, whether inside or outside City Hall. I urge young people, working people, and union members to join Workers' Strike Back. Thank you.
Who's ready to build Workers' Strike Back and fight for the things we need? All right. Thank you so much. So we have 3 more speakers, and then we'll take some questions from the media and press if there are any, which I imagine there might be. So I'm going to go ahead and actually first, before I'll say that, I think to really emphasize the fact that this year will be a fighting year, as always, for Councilmember Sawant's office. We would like to really encourage all press to come to a press conference we'll be having on Tuesday, which we'll be sending out details about soon, which the January 24th at noon at City Hall, for another very important announcement for a fight we'll be having very shortly, a new struggle. So go ahead and mark your calendars with that. We're here today, as we have been many times before, at New Hope Baptist Church. And our next speaker is Senior Pastor Reverend Jeffrey. As most of you know by now, Reverend Jeffrey has fought alongside this council office from the beginning, dedicated his life to truly unrelenting struggle against racism, all inequality that stems from the capitalist system. And we fought for the Amazon tax together in 2020. Few were as prominent and crucial a part of that struggle as Reverend Jeffrey and the community in the Central District were. Affordable housing funding for communities like the Central District in Seattle. And so he's here today to help us build and launch Workers' Strike Back. Thank you so much, Reverend Jeffrey.
First, I want to thank Councilwoman Sawant for her service to this city. One of the most...
Get closer to the mic.
Okay. I want to thank Councilwoman Sawant for her service to this city. One of the most pressing issues facing this country and this world today is wealth inequality, which is caused historically by unjust labor practices, racial discrimination, and corporate exploitation and industrial colonialization of poor, people of color, and economically disadvantaged countries. According to the Federal Reserve 2021 fourth quarter report, 1% of households in the United States holds 32.3% of all the wealth in this country, while the bottom 50% hold less than 3%, 2.6%. According to some reports, wealth inequality has substantially increased in the United States to the point where 1% and the top 10% own increasingly concentrated amounts of the wealth. What we need today, what we need now, is an organization such as the one that Councilwoman Sawant bravely is beginning to launch. We need this organization today to help and sustain the rights of workers, an organization committed to eliminating poverty, not tolerating it, through full employment. According to Martin Luther King, as he began his march on Washington, work and equity, wage is not a privilege, it's a right. It's a right for everybody. It's a civil right. Today, I applaud Kshama Sawant as she prepares to take on this important work. I also thank her for her life-changing work that she did for our community while on City Council. However, there is only so much that can be accomplished through this political system, bankrolled by corporations and big money interests. I believe that this is not the end for Kshama Sawant, but this is simply a new beginning, and I will do everything I can within my power to assist her as we move forward to deal with the problems of poverty, social injustice, the dictatorship of the rich, and the homeless problem that we have in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jeffrey. I think I speak for everyone when we say we look forward to many more years of struggle together. So next, I'd like to introduce Raghav Kaushik, who is our next speaker. He's been involved in the Coalition of Seattle Indian Americans and many other organizations that we fought alongside for many years in Councilmember Kshama Sawant's office. And alongside Raghav and other activists, we won the first in the nation resolution 3 years ago, which was against the deeply reactionary anti-Muslim laws, really anti-poor citizenship laws that were passed, attempted to be passed in India by the right-wing reactionary Hindu fundamentalist BJP. This resolution was followed by resolutions similarly passed in multiple cities across the nation and was a shot in the arm for the movement in India. Raghav was also a prominent activist in the tax Amazon struggle, and we're honored to have him here today as well. So thanks so much, Raghav.
So I've known Kshama for a decade. In fact, our friendship started when she was running for city council in 2013. And it started by me co-organizing a fundraiser for her. And since then, it's been a privilege for me to be a part of and witness firsthand the incredible set of victories that Kshama and SA have spearheaded. Let me bring up two examples that I was deeply involved in. One was mentioned by Bia, which was the resolution against condemning the horrific laws that the Modi administration, the right-wing Modi administration, passed in India. Seattle was the first city to show solidarity with the uprisings in India against the Modi government, against these laws. And I know from my personal involvement how deep, how meaningful this solidarity was, both for the people there, working in the uprising there, as well as for the South Asian community here. Another example that I was personally involved in very deeply was a resolution for a waiver on COVID vaccine patents. The goal was to make patents, vaccines available to the world. And again, Seattle was the first city to pass such a resolution. And this was a big part of the pressure that was built on the Biden administration who eventually agreed to a waiver, which was record-breaking. If you look at the record of the Democrats, this was a break from the past. Not surprisingly, the Biden administration didn't quite follow through, but they at least agreed to the waiver in principle. One noteworthy aspect of this particular campaign was that while it was focused on the COVID vaccines, it actually offered a bigger critique of patents and intellectual property. And we heard talk about inequality. I completely agree. Patents and intellectual property are one of the biggest sources of inequality in this country and in the world. So that's a good illustration of how the internationalist aspect of her work connects to local issues. We need the kind of approach that Kshama and SA bring being applied to the national scale in this country. We need leadership like hers to win urgent needs for working class in this country and in the world. I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen through Workers' Strike Back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raghav. So our last speaker before we go to questions from the press is Nina Wirtz, who has been fighting alongside our council office for several years now, and who is a rank and file member of the Northwest Carpenters Union and a member of the rank and file caucus, the PJ Maguire group, that really led the way in militantly fighting during the carpenter strike in 2021, demonstrating what it looks like to take on the bosses and, a sellout union leadership and fight back for the things that working people deserve, setting an example here in Seattle and across the country. We're very excited to have Nina here today with us as well.
Thank you. My dad is a retired merchant marine. I spent many holidays at parties in his union hall growing up. I didn't know why his union was so important to him, but his pride was unmistakable. When I joined the Carpenters Union almost 8 years ago, I felt that union pride. I felt the legacy I was now a part of, not just from him, but from the generations that came before. The legacy I hope my son inherits. But it wasn't long before I saw what my union had become, an institution of bureaucrats who had sold us out to the bosses and the two capitalist parties. In the summer of 2021, construction was booming in Seattle. It was time for us carpenters, for all of us, to finally see some of those blood, sweat, and tear-earned profits. But the union wasn't having it. After a growing dissent from 4 failed contracts that didn't even cover the rise of cost of living, we were finally authorized to strike. But between backdoor deals with the building trades union to have off days from picketing, not to mention deals with the contractors themselves to keep us from striking most jobs in the first place, our strike was destined to fail right out of the gate. As one of these dissenters, and now as the co-chair of the rank-and-file-led Peter J. Maguire group, I saw nothing but opposition from the political and labor establishment. My own union started a petition against solidarity. We were accused of all-out sexism by the MLK Labor Council. And the leaders of this city? Well, the Democratic Party says it's pro-labor, but when it came down to actually getting their hands dirty with the boots on the ground, there was no trace of them. We were looking for solidarity from anyone who could give it. We would have welcomed support from any party, any organization who was willing to stand with us and back us up as we demanded a fair contract. But of course, the establishment wasn't willing to challenge the status quo. So who showed up? Socialist City Council member Kshama Sawant. She and the members of Socialist Alternatives stood with us and listened to our demands. She offered $10,000 to a carpenter solidarity fund that our union refused to set up. She introduced legislation to the City Council after hearing our demands. Carpenters from all across the political spectrum were on board because we could see she was paying us more than lip service. She didn't make excuses like the union did. Carpenters and members of Socialist Alternative stood shoulder to shoulder together because we all knew we were bound by the struggle. We knew then, as we know now, it is not political affiliation, it is not race or gender identity that makes us workers. We are all of one class. That's what solidarity looks like. This movement is not only necessary, but it is possible. It is possible to grow a movement without taking money from big business. This city council office spearheaded the fight for 15 to a nationwide demand. No thanks to the Democratic Party, who have yet to fulfill this 2020 presidential election promise. The future of the labor movement, without a doubt, depends on independence from the Democratic Party. Decades of neoliberalism have been filled with empty promises. We're told if we just #vote, our rights won't be taken away. But here we stand on the precipice of SCOTUS taking away our right to strike. Make no mistake, our unions belong to us. We are the union. But the leadership prefers an approach akin to the businesses they should be opposing. These labor leaders work in tandem with the Democrats. We're told to vote for subpar contracts every year because this is the best we can do. How many times are we supposed to settle? So it's time to stop settling. It's time to take back our unions and make them the militant democratic organizations they should be. It's time to organize all workers, union and non-union, public and private sector, through a national campaign. It's time for a workers' party. Kshama Sawant's office has only shown us a taste of what is possible. It's time for workers to strike back.
When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. All right. Thank you to our speakers. We had a bit of a live stream issue at the beginning, so I just want to reiterate for folks, the launch event that we'll be having here in Seattle is March 4th, Saturday, March 4th at noon at Kane Hall on the University of Washington campus, room 130. And it's going to be really exciting. We've got some leaflets here, and I want to reiterate the 5 demands of Workers Strike Back, which I think are exciting, for a lot of people here to hear for the first time, and for folks online to be able to see this. The first demand: workers need a real raise. The second: good union jobs for all. Fight racism, sexism, and all oppression. Quality, affordable housing, and free health care for all. And no more sellouts. We need a new party. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it over. Oh, yeah, I think that's, one last thing I wanted to mention before we go to questions. We want folks who are listening right now to reach out to us. We have an email, solidarity@workersstrikeback.org. We would love to hear from you. Send us a message on any social media platform. Follow us, Workers Strike Back, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So we'll bring Councilmember Kshama Sawant back up here now for questions.
And also, if you have questions for any of the other speakers.
Yeah.
Councilmember, why make the re-election announcement today,
What do you mean, as opposed to when?
as opposed to a couple months down the road when you have this big event? Why make the announcement today? The timing of the announcement.
Because the event that we're having on March, which is the launch of our national campaign and movement, Workers Strike Back, is not going to happen because we announced it. It's going to happen if we build for it. And so we want to encourage everybody who's watching this and all the tabling and leafletting that we're going to do from today onwards to build for people to come to that launch, because it is important for the success, imperative for the success of Workers Strike Back, that tens of thousands in Seattle and hundreds of thousands nationwide join us in the Workers Strike Back project.
So what factored into your decision to not seek re-election?
As I said before, and as others have said, in reality, what stands out about our nearly decade, and by the time I end my term, it will be a whole decade that we will have been in office. And what stands out, what is astoundingly remarkable about what we have accomplished, is that we have won 4 elections and and also become the longest serving sitting city council member, not on the basis of go along to get along politics, not on the basis of wine and cheese with the Chamber of Commerce and Democratic establishment, but by fighting back and becoming a thorn in the side of the Seattle ruling class. That's what stands out, but it also shows that this is not going to be enough. Having one city council office cannot replace a nationwide movement, and it truly is necessary at this point that socialist alternative union members like Nina Wirtz and others around the nation who want real social and economic justice, that we build a much wider campaign that brings together people from many cities.
So did you feel that you couldn't accomplish that while still serving as city council member?
You know, it is people who represent corporate politics and the elite, whether in the media or in the political establishment, who will say both that we didn't accomplish anything even though we have won historic victories, and also, oh, if you're leaving office, then it means that you don't think you can accomplish over here, and also that maybe you are leaving office to go away from workers to retreat. In reality, what this is the launching of a nationwide campaign to take the message of what we have won here to workers nationally. And as I said, it would not be on the shoulders of socialist alternative had the labor leadership or other very prominent leaders on the left like AOC and Bernie Sanders launched a nationwide movement. I wish they had. I would proudly have joined that movement and fought for our ideas, but that hasn't happened. So this is a beginning, and we hope that rank and file workers and young people across the nation will feel inspired to join us and begin this fight back.
Go over here.
So Justin from CapitolHillSeattle.com. I'm curious to know more about the collective decision of Socialist Alternative around any possible heir apparent or someone else to pick up your mantle here in District 3. How come there's not a candidate here announcing a campaign?
Well, you know, just the vocabulary of heir apparent and picking up an individual's mantle, that is completely contradictory to actually how working people win victories. One of the fundamental components of why Socialist Alternatives elected office has been, as I said, fundamentally different than any other elected office is because we don't play personality politics. Because it is when you rely on an individual, however well-meaning, to make miracles happen is when the sellout begins. The reason our office is so strong is that I am not alone. I have Socialist Alternative with me, and Socialist Alternative itself is rooted in movements of working class people. And it is through using our office to build broader struggle that we have been able to win $15 an hour Amazon tax and renters' rights victories. Without that collective approach, nothing is possible.
So have you discussed running another candidate yet?
So, you know, so whether or not to run a candidate, again, based on everything I just said, cannot be a question of an individual. If we run a campaign, it is going to be through the resources of Socialist Alternative and the broader movement we build. And if we throw in resources behind one campaign, it takes away resources from another. So we think the best possible use of Socialist Alternative's resources and the powerful solidarity that we bring for working class people is best used at this moment by launching this national campaign.
So that's a no.
No to what?
No, you're not running a Socialist Alternative candidate in District 3.
We're not running, but I'm explaining why. If you're interested in why, then that was the answer. If you're not interested, you know, you can take whatever you want from it.
I also want to make sure I understand.
Any other questions?
How much did the recall campaign last cycle weigh on your decision whether to seek re-election?
I think the working people who are watching this live stream on social media are going to understand that, corporate media will never, these questions that we are seeing here, they are proof that corporate media, this is from a local network station, are never going to be on the side of working people. And the same reality, the same facts are portrayed as 180-degree opposite. I mean, this question reminds me of the New York Times after we had won our 2019 election, after having beaten the millions of dollars of Amazon and Jeff Bezos. The New York Times had the temerity to ask me, what do you think about the campaign that you just nearly lost? And I said, that's a very funny way you have of describing how we won the campaign against Amazon. So I think part of, and in fact, your question really answers also why we are launching, alongside Workers Strike Back, the broadcast, video broadcast also, because there is such a vacuum in the media. I mean, corporate media, of course, are not on our side, but let alone that, even the left media, where there's a vacuum of a real analysis, honest analysis that supports the anger of, validates the anger of working class people, much less provides a strategy for a fight back. So, what's remarkable about the recall campaign and the other 3 elections that we have won is not that they were close, and I have an answer for that too, but in reality, what's remarkable is that despite how we have fought back and never sold out, we have won 4 elections. That is tremendously historic. There is no question about that. But what's remarkable about the recall fight itself is that not only did we have big corporations, corporate landlords, the democratic establishment, all of those, usual suspects arrayed against us, they couldn't defeat us in any of the previous elections. They couldn't defeat us in 2019, despite all of the money of Jeff Bezos. They have tried lawsuit after lawsuit. They brought frivolous, baseless ethics complaints against me. And then when nothing worked, they tried the recall attack against us. And to make that attack, they even brought the forces of the capitalist institutions, including the Supreme Court, to bear, forcing an unprecedented December election. And despite everything stacked against us, including a nearly winter election when most voters don't know that there's a ballot coming their way, we were able to defeat them and win despite all that. In fact, we had record numbers of people, young people especially, saying, I wasn't even going to register to vote, but for this, I will register and I will vote and I will become part of your campaign. And let's not forget that the same year that we faced the recall and we defeated them, 2 other progressives, Lorena Gonzalez and Nikita Oliver, lost their campaigns in the regular election because they refused to fight and they hugged the establishment to their defeat.
Thank you so much. I think we are done with questions here. Okay, last one.
Is your hope that your Worker Strike Back initiative gets a national image, a national following, a national platform?
Absolutely, Workers Strike Back is meant to be a national movement. That is why we are doing this launch not just in Seattle, but as I said, workers and socialists and union members in multiple other cities will be launching themselves as well. And we're going to be using our broadcast program, video broadcast on strike, to also air nationally and internationally. In fact, we need a nationwide and international discussion of working class people about how should we build the fight back, how should we win, how, after all the betrayals by the Squad and by Pramila Jayapal, can we win Medicare for all? Should we put our faith in them or should we organize in the grassroots? That's one of the questions.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, first of all, we're not going anywhere right now because we still have a whole year ahead of us using our city council office. But beyond that, Workers Strike Back, as I said, is going to be built in multiple cities. Seattle is one of them. So absolutely, that if we have renters' rights struggles here after we finish our term, then we will be part of that. And it's not only the renters' rights or affordable housing questions inside Seattle. There will be regional fights, I hope, on affordable housing and ending homelessness. We also have the UPS contract renewal coming up. We have the West Coast Port workers contract coming up. There will be local struggles. UAW 4121 will be moving into contract battle very soon. So we are going to have multiple local, regional, and national struggles. And at every step that is possible for Workers Strike Back to be involved and share our ideas on strategy and really be shoulder to shoulder with working class people, we are going to be there.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. When we fight, union! Thank you to everyone tuning in online, and follow us on social media for